Hi, my name is Netanel Eliashiv. I want to thank the Karen Tikva, the Tikva Foundation, for inviting me here today to discuss the relation between the economy and Rav Kook's thought system. In recent years in Israel, we see an increase in the interest in economy and all kinds of theories on the economy. And that's happening more and more with the younger population in Israel, and that includes the religious young population in Israel. And the religious population in Israel is affected much by the thought system of Rav Kook, Rabbi Abram Isaac Cohen Kook. He was the rabbi of Jaffa and the early settlements in 1904 through 1914, and he became the rabbi of Jerusalem in 1919, 1920, and a year after that he became the chief rabbi. But his largest contribution is his thought system, his many books and diaries that he left us with a huge amount of topics that he discusses spiritually. And the question I asked myself was, what does Rav Kook have to tell us about the economy? So first of all, let's put it straightly. Rav Kook wasn't an economist. In his personal life, he was very far from anything that had to do with money. There are many stories about that. I'll just tell one. There are many more like it. When he was the rabbi of Jaffa and the colonies or the settlements in the British Mandate, actually it wasn't British then, it was Turkish, in pre-Israel. So his wife went to the mayor of Tel Aviv, and the name of the mayor happened to be Mayor Dizengoff. And she complained that it's been many months and they haven't gotten a salary. And Mayor Dizengoff was shocked to hear that his rabbi didn't get his salary. And it turned out that he did get a salary, but since all the poor of the area knew that he was such a generous man and he liked giving tzedakah, charity, so they would wait for him. And when he exited the office where he got his salary, by the time he got home, nothing was left. So he was a very generous person, and he wasn't an economist. And even if somebody would manage to give us some kind of a proof that he believed in one of the economic theories, I wouldn't think much of it, because the economy changed so much in the past 120 years. What value does it have to say that somebody in 1900, let's say, he was a communist? Many Jews, idealistic Jews, were communists in 1900 until communism began, and then it turned out to be such a terrible failure. And same thing with socialism. And actually, capitalism has also changed much. People were totally against any intervention by the federal government. And then after the Great Depression, it turned out that maybe sometimes the government does have to intervene. So I wouldn't prove anything about the economy from anything that somebody said 120 years ago. So we're not going to really get into a specific theory, but we are going to look for relations between the economic world and the spiritual world, because usually people think that there's no connection. Usually people think that money and economy is something dirty for all kinds of greedy people, and idealists, they deal with more lofty matters. And that's not true, because everything is related to economy. So if somebody's going to tell me that there's nothing but economy, I'm going to disagree with him. But if somebody, on the other hand, would say the economy isn't important, or it isn't related to ideals, I'll also disagree with him. So we're going to look for the relations in Rav Kook's thought system between the economy and spirituality. The first topic we want to deal with is the one that we call Gadol Hanene Me'Igia Kapav. I'll try to translate everything I say in Hebrew as best as I can. Let's begin with somebody who wrote in English, Adam Smith. Adam Smith, in his book on the Wealth of Nations, maybe one of the most famous quotations is the one in which he explains why the people who really do good for the economy aren't those who are trying to improve the economy, rather those who are acting out of their own self-interest, right? He intends, says Adam Smith, he intends only his own gain, and he is in this, as in many other cases, led by an invisible hand to promote an end which was not part of his intention, which means that he didn't intend to improve society and economy. He intended to make more money. But when more and more people will do this, just do their best to make more money, and when we'll allow them to do that, and it'll pay to do that, then that will produce the best economy, okay? So that sounds a bit, from the idealistic point of view, that sounds a bit dull. It sounds as if that self-interest is more important than ideals. And people with ideals, and values, they don't really help much. The people who do help are just greedy people who act in their own self-interest. That's the way some people look at it. But we'll immediately see that Rav Kook sees it differently. As a matter of fact, he deepens our understanding of this principle that Adam Smith wrote about. And he does this using the Gemara, the Talmud, which says, Gadol hanehene miyagia kapav, in the tractate of Brachot, Gadol hanehene miyagia kapav, yoter miyireh shamayim. He who enjoys his own toil, his own profit, he is bigger than a God-fearing person. Because it says about he who enjoys his own toil, who works for his self-interest, it says about him, Yegia kapecha ki tochel, ashrecha v'tov lach. And which means you will be happy and it will be good. It will be good for you. And he who fears God, it only says, Ashrei ish yirei Hashem. You'll be happy, but it doesn't mention the part about the goodness. So I suppose that the Talmud didn't think that we were speaking about somebody who enjoys his own toil and he's totally without a fear of God and he's an immoral person. We're speaking about a good guy who works and earns and profits, and he's the person we want to be. That's pretty much what the Talmud says. What does Rav Kook have to say about this? He says that actually this is a very deep spiritual principle, not only a material principle. Why? Because he says, and he didn't invent this idea, Kabbalists before him dealt with it. They said that actually the whole purpose to create the world in which we live in and to create man as we know him is because, we say that the world to come is the perfect place. So if it's so perfect, why didn't God just put us there as nishamot, as spirits in this perfect world? Why did we have to go through this material world? And their explanation is that if God would put us in some kind of a spiritual world where everything would be perfect, then we would have a very good time. But though they don't have time there, but it would be good for us. But we would be missing something very, very basic. What would we be missing? We would be missing the satisfaction that one has when his reward is due to his efforts. And he didn't just get it for free. Okay, so that's why God actually created this world, which we believe is just the first stage on our way to the world to come. And he created man in this material state. And we go through all kinds of difficulties in this world, and we actually earn it. We earn the goodness which we'll get in the world to come. That's the Kabbalist's idea. Says Rav Kook, okay, that's fine. How will man reach such a deep insight? The only way he'll reach such a deep spiritual insight, which will encourage him to work hard, is only if it's built into his material self. Which means the fact that to succeed, we have to work hard, and that if we do work hard, then we'll bring rewards to ourselves, And Adam Smith adds to this, not only to ourselves, but society and the economy will do better if many people work in this way. So that makes it a part of our very, very self, the understanding that there's a connection between effort and profit. Now, if you understand this on the material level, and understanding it doesn't mean only in your head, it means it has to be a part of our nature. When it becomes a part of our nature in the material world, in the economic world, then it's a part of us. And when man will become more spiritual and understand that there's not only matter in this world, there's also a spiritual side to this world, and it's maybe the deeper and more important part of life, then he'll translate it into the spiritual realm as well. And then he'll become an achiever on the spiritual level. He'll become somebody who enjoys the hard work. He won't expect others to do the work for him. He will be independent. He will do the work, and he'll do the spiritual work, and he will end up reaping the profit, the spiritual profit as well. So what Rav Kook actually did in this commentary is bridge the gap. He took something that looked very material and didn't seem to be very idealistic at all, and he said this works very well with our spiritual ideals. The material side of man and the spiritual side, they complement each other. And that's why the world was created as it was. That's why the economy works as it does. It's in order for man to have, Rav Kook, he gives a much deeper and spiritual meaning to what Adam Smith wrote, because Adam Smith was only speaking about what worked. Rav Kook, as a religious philosopher, he talks about the why. Why is it that this is what works? Why is it that the economy has to be based on man's efforts and want to profit? And he says, because that's part of the healthy, full stature of a human being. That's part of being a man. Take this away from man, he won't be what he's supposed to be. And if he will not be what he's supposed to be on the material level, he has no chance to ever make it on the spiritual level. This reminds us of another commentary of Rav Kook, this time to a different Gemara, which talks about the endless appetite that one has for profit. Okay? Our sages said that "Ein adam yotze min ha'olam v'chatzi ta'avato biyado." A man doesn't leave this world with even half of what he dreamed that he would accomplish. You always want more. They also said that he who has 100 wants 200, and he who has 200 wants 400. So man's economic appetite is actually unlimited. People always want more. And this might sound to the idealistic person a bit, maybe I would even say frightening, because, material, we always say that the material side of the world is only the lower side, and man should also have spiritual aspirations. And if people always want more and more of money and of profit, and they don't know how to limit it, so maybe there's something wrong with mankind. Rav Kook will teach us pretty much the opposite, and he'll do that based on the Gemara, the Talmud, which says, it says this: when Moshe Rabbeinu, when he gave his last speech, and before he departed from this world, he mentioned all kinds of places that the people of Israel traveled in when they were in the desert. One of these places is called V'di Zahav. Di Zahav. Now, Zahav in English, that's easy to translate. Zahav is gold. Gold, which is another word for money in general. And Di, in Hebrew, it depends how you read it. You can also read it as dai. If you read it as dai, it would be enough. So the sages understood this as saying that something about enough gold. And they said the following. I'm going to use the famous Schottenstein translation to the Talmud, but nothing's better as the original, of course. Moses flung words upwards, which means he came with a complaint to God. He was blaming God for something that the people of Israel did. He was actually, of course, not trying to fight with God. Rather, he was trying to speak on behalf of his people and give an excuse to their behavior. And they speak about this di-zahav. What is it meant by di-zahav? In the Academy of Rabbi Yanai, they said, "Thus said Moshe before the Holy One, blessed is He, Master of the universe, because of the silver and gold that you lavished upon Israel until they said enough, that is what caused them to make the golden calf." Okay, what is all this supposed to mean? The golden calf, of course, was a big mess that our forefathers made. They just got the Torah they were at Sinai. They heard God speaking to them. The first thing that he said was not to make idols. And the first thing that they did when they were on recess and they thought that their teacher, Moshe, wasn't around, the first thing that they did, they created a golden calf. And that was a big sin, and we were punished for it. And Moshe was saying, look, you have to take part of the blame because you gave them so much gold and silver when they departed from Egypt. Then you gave them a lot of gold and silver, and that caused them to make the golden calf. How are these two things connected? Well, first of all, you can always explain that since they had gold, they made a golden calf. If they wouldn't have that material, then they wouldn't do that transgression, that sin. But, you know, the problem with the golden calf wasn't that it was golden. It was that they were worshiping an idol. So I would suppose that most people would go with the second kind of commentary, which is saying that, you know, the material world and the spiritual world, they don't go well together. So when you gave them so much gold and silver, you made the people more shallow and more material. And then naturally, instead of worshiping Hashem, our God, then they went after the easier, more material thing, which would be to worship an idol. I suppose that most rabbis would explain the Gemara this way. Rav Kook explains it totally differently. What he basically says is this. The main distinction between worshiping Hashem, worshiping our God, and worshiping an idol is that Hashem is infinite. And you can't see him, you can't put him in your pocket, there's no picture. He is infinite and he doesn't have a body. And what that means, why is this so important? Because when you worship someone so divine and infinite like our God, that affects you as well. It makes you aspire to be like him, which means you'll always try to improve yourself more and more because there's no end. Just as God has no end, then you who are created in his image, you also have no end. You can always go for more and more. And even if you reach some kind of spiritual peak, that peak is only the beginning of your trip to the next peak, and it's never going to end, and it's good that it's never going to end because that's what we want. We always want to become better and better, and there's no limit to this. It's really without any limit. On the other hand, what does worshiping an idol mean? It means that you're going for the easier life, which says, I'm going to worship a God who I can see and feel and put in my pocket, and you know, everything is very graphic and clear. And what does that do to man? It also makes his spiritual motivation become very limited. Just as you believe in a limited God, you're also going to believe in human limitations, and you're always going to say, I'm too weak to do this, and I'm too weak to do that. My willpower is also limited, and you know, I'll just do a pretty poor job in life in general, and there's nowhere to really, there's no reason to work hard because there's nowhere that special that I'm going to. That's what happens when you worship an idol, and that's why the Torah sees worshiping idols as such a bad. It's not, the problem isn't the idol. The problem is what it means for the person who's worshiping the idol. What does all this have to do with the gold and the economy? Says Rav Kook, you know, this is a very spiritual idea, the idea of worshiping an infinite God that you can't see. How will a man who was created in a material existence like we are, how will he ever reach these kinds of thoughts? How will it become common for people to believe in a God that you can't put in your pocket, a God that you can't see, a God that you can't feel? Says Rav Kook, that's why God created this concept on the material realm as well. Where did he create it in the material realm? Says Rav Kook, the fact that man was created with a desire for more and more on the economical level, the fact that he always wants more money, more profit, Rav Kook says that's not only is that not a bad thing, he says it's essential. We shouldn't mess with that. The example I usually use is the example of children at a bar mitzvah. The bar mitzvah, a 13th birthday of a Jewish boy, so the first time he reads in the synagogue in the Torah, so we throw candy at him. And then the kids gather there. It's a free market, and there's competition, and all the children want as much candy as possible. And I've never seen a child, at least not a healthy child in his mind and body, I've never seen a child say to himself, look, I think 6 pieces of candy, that's enough for me. I don't need more than 6 pieces of candy. When I reach that number, I'll just leave the battlefield and let other kids have more of the candy. No, we see them gathering more and more, much more than they can consume. And we see children, walking to their father like this with dozens of pieces of candy if they were lucky enough or strong enough to win in the competition. But, there's a way to ruin. So we see that even children, they always want more and more. And just like children want more and more candy, people always want more and more. That's natural. They want more and more on the material side. Now, how can you ruin a child's appetite? We're speaking actually about appetite, right? How can you ruin a child's appetite for collecting candy? Well, if you would just send them a shipment, like a truckload. I'm not speaking about 100 or 1,000 pieces of candies. I'm speaking about a truckload of tons of candy. I'm speaking about 1,000,000 pieces of candy. If you just give a child 1,000,000 pieces of candy, he'll never fight for a piece of candy in the synagogue. He'll lose any interest in it because that's too much. What will he say? He'll say, die. He'll say, enough. I have enough of this. Enough is enough, right? Rav Kook says, look, when you gave the people of Israel so much silver and gold, of course you did it out of a good intention, but it actually ruined them. Why did it ruin them? Because it spoiled their want, it spoiled their natural and basic appetite for more. It spoiled it on the material level. And what happened? What happened is that it also spoiled them on the spiritual level, because when somebody doesn't have it in himself on the material level, then he won't have anywhere to take it from on the spiritual level. And then says Rav Kook, that's what Moshe Rabbeinu was saying. The problem wasn't that you made them too material, like the other commentary we mentioned. On the contrary, is you made them non-material. You ruined the basic system which you yourself created, which says that a healthy person has a healthy appetite for more. Now, of course, we don't want people to stay there. We want them to take it to a spiritual level. But if they don't have it on the basic level, they'll never reach it on the spiritual level. So actually, this is an example of where the material level and the spiritual level work together, and they should complement each other. Of course, we expect man to mature and understand that money and material gain and profit isn't the only thing in this world, maybe not even the most important thing in this world. And he should dedicate himself also to idealistic aspirations, but it has to begin on the material level. Another interesting connection in Rav Kook's thought system between the economy and the spiritual realm would regard the markets and trade system. We know that there's an advantage in economy when you use specialization and trade. Let's just put that down over here. Specialization. Hope you can see that over there. and trade. And to understand specialization in trade, we have to speak about the absolute advantage and the comparative advantage. So we'll put that down as well. You can have an absolute advantage and a comparative advantage. What does this mean? If there are any viewers here who haven't taken a course on microeconomics. Let's say that I know how to build chairs. Okay, that's my main job. But I also like to plant flowers, okay? And there's another gentleman who works in planting flowers. And I'm so good and talented that not only am I better than him in my job, which means building chairs, I'm a carpenter, I'm also better than him in his job. I know how to plant flowers more efficiently than he does. That's called an absolute advantage. When I'm better than somebody at something, that means I have an absolute advantage. And I can have an absolute advantage in many fields if I'm a very talented individual, okay? But I can have a comparative advantage in only one field, which means that maybe I'm better than him at planting these flowers, but I'm even better, my advantage is larger when I compare myself to him in building chairs. Let's say I'm 2 times better than him in planting flowers, but I'm 3 times better than him in building chairs, okay? So microeconomics teaches us that it would be much more profitable for both of us, both for me and for him, if I wouldn't try to do his job instead of him. Rather, I would use the principle of specialization. I would specialize in my field, in which I'm a bigger expert. I would only build chairs. Of course, if you want as a hobby, you can always plant flowers, but we're speaking on the economical level. I should specialize in what I'm better at, in what I have a comparative advantage in. And then, how will I have flowers in my backyard? Then we'll have trade, okay? I'll sell him a chair and he'll plant a certain amount of flowers, and microeconomics proves very, very clearly that in this case, I'll end up with more chairs and flowers, and he'll end up with more chairs and flowers that each of us could have had if we would try to do each other's jobs. So this is the basic economic principle of specialization and trade, and we know that this has been going on for thousands of years. There were marketplaces at the beginning. People were really trading goods, just like we gave an example of chairs for flowers, and then they started trading for money, which at the beginning was real silver, and then it became just more of a piece of paper that symbolizes things, and today we do transactions on the internet. But basically the world we live in is a world of commerce, a world of trade, and an individual doesn't really have to do everything on himself. Okay, that's part of economy. Is there any spiritual principle in this? Rav Kook believes that there is. First of all, it turns out that our sages say that no less than Yaakov Avinu, Jacob, our forefather, actually dealt with this whole thing of markets and money, because after he returned to the land of Israel and he went through a lot of hard times out of Israel, he wanted to do something to benefit mankind. It says in the Torah, "Vayichan et pnei ha'ir." Jacob arrived intact and he encamped before the city of Shechem. And then the sages say this. Rav said that this indicated that Jacob established a new coin for the city. The city of Shechem was coinless. And then came Jacob, and he gave them the idea of the coin. There was another sage, Shmuel, And he said, Shvakim tiken lahem. He taught them how to open a marketplace. So this is very interesting that our sages, of course we're not speaking about historical accuracy. They didn't usually try to say that this is exactly what happened. But that only makes it more interesting. Why did our sages want to say that such a spiritual person like Jacob, Yaakov Avinu, dealt with this whole thing of marketplaces and coins and establishing the coin of the city of Shechem? Rav Kook has an interesting explanation, and he says it has to do with the way we perceive other people, because there are two basic ways to perceive anybody who is not yourself. You can perceive him as a threat, and you can perceive him as a blessing. And mankind began pretty bad on this one, because there were only two people in the world. I mean, there were two parents, but there were only two young people in the world, Cain and Abel, and Cain murdered Abel. He murdered his own brother because he felt that the world was not large enough for these two people. He thought that his very own brother was a threat and not a source of blessing for him. So we didn't start very well on this one. But we want to encourage the view that says that, you know, our other people in this world, then we can see a benefit from them, and that we can all work together for our common good. And this has a very large spiritual meaning. You know, in the high holidays, Jews all across the world, they pray, "V'yasu kulam aguda achat la'asot retzoncha belevav shalem." All of mankind, they will all become a group of one people who are doing their best to do your will, God's will. And the more people who are doing God's will, then the more the merrier. The more it will be a better place. The world will be a better place spiritually. So how will this work spiritually? Again, the same question. How will this work spiritually? Only if it begins in the material realm. Okay? The fact that the world is better when I don't do everything by myself, rather I have to deal with other people. I actually need them. If I want to do well, I need them. I need them to buy my goods, what I know how to produce, and I need them because I want to buy what they know how to produce. And that will already give us the basic notion that other people, I have to be friendly with them, and it will be beneficiary for me if I will be friendly with other people. And you know, to do business with other people, you have to have a certain relationship that evolves, and that's important. So Rav Kook says the reason that Yaakov Avinu was dealing with the market and the trade and the coin is because he knew that the material connection between people is step one in creating a spiritual connection between people. And so it's actually something very idealistic. So again, we see Rav Kook is looking for the neshama, the soul, in something that looks to be very, very material with no special value in it except for the monetary value. He says, no, don't look at it that way. And that's why God created the world this way. He could have created it otherwise. The economy could have worked otherwise, and it's difficult for us to imagine because we only know the world as we know it. But Rav Kook is always trying to find the godly meaning in this. And he's looking for the godly meaning in the rules of the economy. And he says this is important because just as it works on the material side, that's the prequel to doing it on the spiritual side. Okay. Another topic that we want to deal with now is about the fact, you know, microeconomics is defined as a branch of thought that is dedicated to dealing with the allocation of limited resources, right? Actually, the whole world is filled with resources, but they're all limited. We would all want more, but the resources are limited. Resources. Question is, why are the resources limited? Microeconomists won't ask this question because they deal with the world as we find it, and that's the way things are, and we begin with that. But if you're thinking about it spiritually, like Rav Kook would think about things, we would ask, okay, why did God create us in a world where the resources are so limited? Why is it so difficult to make a profit in this world? Of course, if man strives and if he works hard, he usually will manage to see a profit, but he has to work hard. It's so hard that our sages said, Kashin mizonotav shel adam kikriyat yam suf, which would mean earning a livelihood is so difficult. It's as difficult as splitting the sea, splitting the Yam Suf, and that's a bit surprising. Why is it so difficult for most people in the world? They have to work hard from the beginning until the end. So there's an interesting story in Masechet Shabbat, the tractate of Shabbat, Nun Gimel, and it tells a pretty shocking story. Okay, there was a certain person, it says, and his wife died, leaving him his son to nurse. Okay, so this is a tragedy. His wife passed away, and it turns out that he did not have enough money to pay the fee of a wet nurse. So he couldn't hire some lady to feed his child, to breastfeed his child. So what should a man, he was so poor, what can he do? So the Talmud says that a miracle was performed for him. His breasts were opened like the two breasts of a woman, and he nursed his son. Wow, that's pretty amazing. That's a real miracle, right? You know, that's something that we don't know how to do, and we've never witnessed something like this. It doesn't really matter if this was a story that really happened or not. What interests us is the way the Talmud tells it. And the question is, why did God have to make the miracle so strange and peculiar? I suppose that if we were consulted, you know, an average person was consulted, what should God do to help this guy? We would say he should give him the money that he needs. Just you know, if you're already doing a miracle, it would seem to be a more simple and earthly miracle if you just give this poor guy some money somehow. Just create money, and he'll be able to hire the woman. Put the money at his door, and he'll find it. That makes more sense in our eyes. It seems to be less of a miracle than to change his body in such an amazing way. Now, the sages say about this man, "Bo'u re'eh kama kashim mizonotav shel adam, shenishtanu alav sidrei bereshit." Learn from this how difficult it is to make a livelihood, that God had to change the natural order and not make such a miracle. Okay, I'll say it in Rav Yuda's words. See how difficult it is to provide a person's food, for the natural order was changed on this man's behalf. Rav Nachman said, "You may know that this is so from the fact that miracles happen to save people's lives, but food is not created." Which means, okay, first of all, miracles usually don't happen. Okay, and even when they do happen, then they don't happen in the way that suddenly somebody finds food or money. You know, even such a far-fetched miracle as changing his body so he can feed his own baby, that makes more sense in God's eyes than changing the way the economy works. Now, what does Rav Kook take from this passage in the Talmud? Rav Kook says, first of all, it's to teach us that the rules of the economy, they're very complicated. And when you change, when you change somebody's body, an individual's body in some miraculous way, it doesn't affect everybody else. But when you change one individual's financial situation, that has a very large effect. They didn't call it that way back then, but that's what we call the butterfly effect. You know, if one person's financial status would change in a miraculous way, it would have an effect. And you never know what it would affect. So God wouldn't prefer It would be more economic, I would say, to have a total miracle like changing one man's body and not mess with the system. Don't mess with the laws of the economy. And it also comes to teach us something about the fact that the limited resources, that there's a reason behind it. Rav Kook always is trying to look for the godly reason in the way the economy works. There's a reason behind the fact that we all have to work so hard for our money. There's another story in the Talmud which reminds us about of this principle, and tells about a sage named Rabbi Elazar ben Padat. Okay, he was very poor. There were many sages who were poor, but he was extremely poor. And once he was so hungry that he ate something that he shouldn't have eaten, and he passed out. He was in a coma or something like that. And the sages came to visit him, and they saw him while he was sleeping. It says sleeping in the Gemara, but he was obviously not regularly sleeping. He was laughing and crying, and they asked him, and then he woke up. He came out of it. He came back. And they asked him, why were you crying and smiling? And he said that he had a vision. You know, he was with one foot in the world to come. He was almost dead. And he said that in this special situation, he had a meeting with God, with the Almighty. And he asked him, God, Ad matay etzta'er b'hai alma? How long more will I have to suffer in this world? Look what you're putting me through. It's so rough. The resources are so limited. They're so scarce. I can't even feed myself. I'm suffering so much in this world. And then God, who loves him, he says, Elazar b'ni, Elazar, my son, look, here's my offer. If you want me to change your financial situation in an unnatural way, you know, I would have to tear apart the whole world, destroy everything, recreate everything again, and then when you're born, we can hope that you'll be born at a better hour, when you have better luck, and then you'll be able to make a better living. And then Rav Elazar ben Padat says, Kule hai ve'efshar? You have to go to all of this trouble, and you can't even promise me that my situation will be better? It's still efshar, it's still maybe you can improve my situation. If you have to destroy the whole world and create everything again, and it's only for a maybe, then, you know, just let the world, keep the things as they are. I don't want you to go to all that trouble. Now, what is the story trying to tell us? I think it's trying to tell us the same principle, that there's a reason for the way things are, and you can't try to change things that have to do with the economy with miracles, not with a God-made miracle, and not with a man-made so-called miracle. Because whenever you try to mess with things and work with the economy not in a non-economic way, it won't work. It just won't work, and the economy will get worse. It won't get better. There's a very specific and certain way, and this is for a reason. It's because this has to do with who we are. There's something good and healthy in the fact that things don't come easy to man, and it's important for man to know that he has to work for his bread, and he has to be creative, and he has to deal with competition, and things aren't that easy. It's important. It's a part of who we are. It makes us make more efforts. It makes us actually. It gives us the right balance in life. It also makes us understand that we're dependent on God, and that's what we take from this Gemara. The idea that, you know, there's a reason behind the way that things are in the economic world, and you can't change them in a non-economic way. Even God so-called can't do that. Of course he can, but he doesn't want to do that. That's because he wants things to be the way they are. And he wants us to improve the economy in economic ways and not in a fake way. So what do we take from this passage in the Talmud? We take the idea that there's a reason behind the way things are in the economic world, and you shouldn't try to change the economy artificially. Even God doesn't do that. That's the idea. Even God can't do it. Of course, he can do whatever he wants to do, but he doesn't do that. He would rather do a totally strange miracle than change the way the economy works. That means that there's something behind it. There's something with a balance between the forces. There's a spiritual principle behind that. And we should definitely strive to improve our personal situation and the national and the world's economy, sure. But we should do that in the natural ways and not artificially. Now, we have one last topic to discuss here, and this is a story which appears in the Gemara of Shabbat, the tractate of Shabbat, Kuf Daled. It's a story about children, small children. They were learning the Aleph Bet, the Hebrew ABC, and their teacher came late, okay. But what's so special about these children that instead of playing around like we all did when our teacher didn't come to classroom, they started to give all kinds of teachings based on the letters that they knew. And the Gemara really thought much about these teachings. It says, and reads like this: the young students came to the study hall today and said things the likes of which were not stated even in the days of Yoshua bin Nun, even in the days of Joshua. You know, special, deep things said by young children. And one of the things that they said had to do with the Hebrew letters, Gimel and Dalet. Gimel and Dalet, okay, the third and fourth letters of the Hebrew alphabet. These are the letters, and what the children said was something pretty simple. They said, Gimel sounds like Gmol. I don't know if they even knew how to spell what I'm writing, but they knew how the words sounded. So they said, Gmol, Dalim. What does this mean in English? Best way I could translate it, I would say, Gmol is reward. Reward. Dalim is the poor. Reward the poor. Or if to be even more accurate, I would say, pay the poor. Pay the poor what they deserve. Because Gmul isn't charity, isn't tzedakah. Gmul is something that somebody deserves. A salary would be called Gmul. So these children said something pretty strange. They said you should pay the poor their salary. What do they mean to say by this, and what does Rav Kook teach us from this Gemara? What do we have to say? You know, till now we've been speaking in praise of the people who work hard and they manage to work with the rules of the economy, and they see profit in this world and in the world to come, and they learn from the material to the spiritual. Everything's fine for people who can do that. What about that percentage of the population who can't do it? What about the people who can't provide for themselves because they might have a physical problem, they might have a psychological problem, they might seem to be okay? This is the most difficult to accept. They might seem to be okay, we don't see any problem, but still they don't manage to do it. There is a certain percentage of the population that just doesn't manage to pull through. And, you know, we don't even understand why, but it's a fact of life. How should we treat them? So, of course, we're against people who use the welfare system to be lazy and not to work, and we always try to send anybody who can work to work, and, you know, that's obvious. But what about these people who can't seem to do it? Rav Kook says what these children said was the most deep perception on tzedakah. Because usually when we give tzedakah, charity, we feel as if we're doing a favor to this poor person, right? And Rav Kook says, actually, you're not doing him a favor. Chazal, the sages said this as well. You're not doing him a favor. I mean, you are, but he's also doing you a favor. What favor is the poor man doing to you? He's allowing you to give, which means part of the way God created the world is that there will be a certain percentage of people who can't provide for themselves. This is for a reason. You think that they're not working, right? Well, Rav Kook says, actually, what these children wanted to teach us is that these poor people, they are working. They're working for who? They're working for society. They're working for God. And what is their job? Their job is to be needy. Because a world in which there won't be needy people at all, a world in which we dissolve poverty totally, would be a world missing something very fundamental. It would be missing the opportunity for one man to help his fellow man. And it's important for mankind to not only be, have our lives revolve around our own selves, rather to also do something on the benefit of other people. That's really fundamental of our spiritual well-being. So there have to be people who need, so we can help them out. So actually, when you help a person like this, you shouldn't feel that you're above him. You're both working. And he's working in, he has a harder job than you, because part of his job is also to be poor. And that's a terrible thing. He can't provide for himself. You shouldn't feel that you're better than him. Again, of course, where people are using our goodwill to not work, then that's not what we're talking about. We always want to distinguish between people who are taking they shouldn't take. There are also things of our sages against people like that. But the people who really do need our help, you shouldn't feel that you're better than them. You're both working. He just has a harder job. And when you give him charity, you're giving him gmol. You're giving him a reward that he deserves. He earned it. He earned it by doing his job, which is existing. Okay? That's also a job. It's a godly job. And that's why you should do everything for your fellow man. Well, what can I say in summary of what we studied together today? I did my best to explain Rav Kook in English, though it's a bit unnatural, both for his teachings and for me. I sometimes found myself at a loss of words, but there is something basic that we can learn from Rav Kook here. I don't think we can learn much about the economy itself. We'll let the economists deal with the economy. But Rav Kook teaches us something very important in his discussion in all these commentaries. He teaches us to respect the world as it is and to respect the economy, to understand that there's a reason behind the way things are. And that doesn't mean that you should leave everything as it is and say everything is perfect. That's not our way of thought. We want to change things, but there are two different ways to change things. One way is to destroy everything and try to rebuild it, which is what communism, let's say, attempted to do. And the other way is to have respect for the present and try to build from the present. You should build the future. And that's Rav Kook's approach. He says, look, you want to change things? Wonderful. We all want to improve in every way possible. But you should do it with respect to the way things are running. Understand that there's a reason behind it. And the reasons aren't just because of human whims. They're because God created the world in a certain way. He created the resources in a certain way. He created limitations. He created the need for relations between different men from different areas and from countries and from people. This all has a reason. And he also created our very own nature in regard to our financial wealth. He created it in a certain way because we need it. It's part of who we are. And when you mess up with things too much, even if you have good intentions, you might be ruining something very fundamental and it might explode in your face. So you should have respect for the world. You should look for the godliness in the natural way that things run, in the natural way that the economy runs. And from there, you can always, and you should, strive to make things better with a deep respect for the way things already are. Thank you very much.